I'm Robin Miller Brecker.
And I'm Karen Lenzer. Welcome to Seeking Center, the podcast.
Join us each week as we have the conversations and weed through the spiritual and holistic clutter for you. We'll boil it down to what you need to know now.
We're all about total wellness, which to us means building a healthy life on a physical, mental, and spiritual level. We'll talk to the trailblazers who will introduce you to the practices, products, and experiences that may be just what you need to hear about to transform your life.
If you're listening to this, it's no accident. Think of this as your seeking center and your place to seek your center. And for even more mega inspo, sign up for Seeking Center, the newsletter at seekingcenter.app. One of our favorite souls who happens to be our favorite astrologer is back. Stevie Calista is here. This is going to be juicy. We're going to be looking back at 2022 from an astrological perspective, as well as looking ahead to 2023. What's in store? How can you incorporate and utilize astrology in the new year? And Stevie's going to tell you all about her latest life-changing offering. Over the past year, she's been working with conscious women, helping them align with their unique soul blueprint. You may be scratching your head thinking, what is she talking about? What is a soul blueprint and what does astrology have to do with it? Stevie will break it down. It may be just what you need to free yourself and help you know what direction to take so that you feel confident about making decisions for your life and your business. We have a lot to cover. Let's get going. Hi, Stevie.
Happy to be here.
It's like talking to family.
It is.
That's what it feels like.
So true. And there's so much to talk about. As we are saying goodbye to 2022, has anything surprised you from an astrological perspective, or did things go according to the plan that you thought they would in terms of when you were looking as we entered 2022?
Yeah, it's so fascinating because I went back to look at my written post of last December and I started to go all the way back down the rabbit hole. And it was really interesting because I would say I'm not really surprised by what went down. I guess from a personal standpoint, feeling it versus intellectualizing is a very different thing, right? You could say something and then you're like going through it, you're like, oh. So I think it was really intense the year. And we've been in really intense years. 2020 was like a big catalyst year, then 2021, and then 2022 echoed those themes. And I think 2022 was really all about push versus pull, old versus new, our old versions of ourselves trying to go back to normal, but that's just gone. It's just not there anymore.
Totally. Yes.
We're here for the new, essentially. And this year had a lot of really expansive spiritual calls, a lot of healing calls for people. And in order to do that, we have to go into our shadow, go into all the places we fragmented and all the traumas. And we really, I think we're pushed into it, maybe shoved sometimes. And it's interesting because the nodes were in Scorpio Taurus all year. And I remember writing about that and being like, what is this going to feel like? And when the nodes shift, we all collectively really feel it. They're like the head and the tail of the dragon. So what we're letting go of and what we're moving towards. And so we were really in the Scorpio tail of the dragon, which is like our trauma and transformation and going into the caves with a flashlight and being like, really, this again? I thought I dealt with this. Layers and layers of transformation, like peeling the onion. And Scorpio really holds that energy around power struggle, where we've given our power away and who controls us, who manipulates us, and how we've been playing in these structures and systems that we desperately want to break free from. And we're not quite there yet. The structures haven't quite fallen. And we're moving into Taurus energy, which is all about what makes us feel safe and secure. And Scorpio says sometimes you have to be shook and traumatized to feel and bring it into your body to then renegotiate what safety means. And Taurus also holds our resources, Mother Nature, our food supplies. We saw all of that go down, all of it. I guess the only surprise I had was more of it didn't happen. And maybe that's just my drama. I can like bring it on. We did see that. We saw those themes.
Yeah. And we continue to. And I think that's your point. That's going to continue. And that old versus new and that being pushed and that it's all a new normal.
I was just talking to somebody about that today, actually, and how we were saying that it's so hard to move forward when everything that you thought was the real reality is completely changed. And especially even for parents who are trying to raise their children now under a whole new set of realities that they never knew. And so there is so much fear going into those places when it's brand new territory, when you've never actually been there before. Was there any kind of common thread, Stevie, that you heard from people in doing their readings that kind of reflected what happened this year? Did you see that kind of woven into a lot of of the charts with that.
Yeah, it's like people don't resonate anymore and they keep trying to do what feels safe or familiar. And then they're like, I hate this. It just feels like more and more suffering for a reason. It's not liberating or it's not your authentic truth. That's really what I noticed is people being on the edge of the quantum leap of being like, I just want to jump, but I'm so scared, but I have to. And then the universe is okay. And now you're going to be pushed. Like the job ends, the relationship ends, the house, something happens, there's a flood. These really extreme things where we think we're grounded in our reality and then we are shoved. And then ultimately after you reground again, you're like, oh, at least for some people.
Oh my, yes. I just want to share this example. My aunt, who I'm extremely close with, she had a major fall in February of 2022. And it was actually February 22nd of 2022,
Wow.
which is obviously a powerful number, right? We were just talking last week and that fall, which ended up breaking her kneecap and having her go through major surgery and then rehab for it, it actually pushed her and my uncle to sell the house that they've lived in for the past 30 years and make a major change. They're moving down to South Carolina. And she said she felt like she was pushed and she's now looks at that date with gratitude. Whereas before she shuddered when she thought of that and thought of everything that happened. But now she says, okay, I had to be pushed to move. And so it's to your point. I feel like it illustrates things in a really very clear way.
It does. That's exactly what I was feeling. And people just needing support to be like, you can do it and you're safe. And even though if it feels really scary, you can still give yourself a parachute and a life jacket and whatever else you need to jump. It's going to be good. Trusting that your higher self has the reins there because you know that whatever energy you're in or what your reality is no longer serving you. It doesn't feel good anymore.
And those big things that happen, or it's like the things are happening for you and not to you, as much as you almost hate to hear that when you're going through trauma or drama. It like just when you said, Robin, like in the looking back, you're like, oh, that's what I mean.
Yeah, not to negate the suffering or the trauma. Like, don't never try to like spiritually bypass the feelings because those feelings are like a version of you that really want to be seen. And even if it's a past life version, it's like a piece of you that's, hi, remember me? I need to be held dearly.
And I think on maybe smaller scales, that idea of going back to the old, there's certain, even little things maybe that we used to do in our routine that just, when you go back to it, it just feels old. It doesn't feel the same. Pay attention to that feeling because that is these nudges, I feel, that may be not as huge as the push, my aunt falling down and breaking, but they are these pushes to move forward, try something new, shake up your routine.
Yes. I think that's such a good way of talking about the Taurus North Node too, because it's the feeling of being embodied. Because like I said, we went from very intellectual in 2021 and 2020. Everything was information and we were trying to figure it all out. And then it's, oh, bam, into the body. Now you have to be embodied in this energy. And that's a very different story than just talking and communicating.
I love that you put it that way. I actually hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah. We have to feel it now.
And we do. We were just saying, as Karen and I were preparing for this episode, and we were talking about what we felt in this past year. And we, even before we started today, we talked about these extreme highs, extreme lows, and that feeling of, and in the lows, it's really low. And we're two people who don't typically feel that.
Yes.
So I can only imagine that everyone listening right now, you've probably had these similar feelings. And I think the way you articulated that we're now embodying all that we had been learning those last 2 years, it helps make sense of it.
And that's really Scorpio is asking you to go visit those places. Scorpio holds the darkness. He's the one that can sometimes be quote unquote depressed or really shadowy. Like we have to go there and then bring it up to the body. And so all the practical techniques were really important this year. Grounding and nourishing your body and lighting a candle. All those ritualistic Taurus things are lifesavers. At least I felt that way.
Having the astrological perspective always, even in the blanket ones where retrogrades and full moons, all of those are just so helpful as little beacons of reality, sanity, however you want to look at it. But that's why.
Yeah.
That's why having these insights just gives you it's like a little life preserver that you can cling to when things just don't seem to be making any sense.
100%. And then in that too, there's always, okay, the shadow side of this and then the invitation side of this. And we can choose, we bounce back and forth between both. And it's up to us. That's where our free will comes in too.
Yeah.
Invitation that's such a great way to put it, because it's that power of choice. You can look at it like, yes, I fell down and I am in pain and agony, but what can I possibly learn from this? Or how could this possibly take me in a new direction? Or what is there for me to understand about myself in this experience? And it's a hard thing to do, like we said, in the midst of it. And yet, if you can just for a moment try to do it, it brings you up a level.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of a level, feeling like you have just a little bit more control of a situation and that there's something positive or good or a good learning experience can come out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do we have in store for 2023, Stevie?
A lot. A lot is changing in 2023. I think 2022 was a lot of echoes of 2021 and finishing up. So it's not completely a year of mass change, but it's a taste. When I was meditating on it and looking at it and analyzing it, I just came up with the taste of the new, but there's still endings and beginnings in 2023. So we're still wrapping some things up and then tasting the new and then wrapping it up and then going back into the new again. It's a back and forth situation. One of the biggest shifts is actually in March. We have Pluto going into Aquarius, and he spends about 20 years in a sign. So the last time he changed was 2008 when he moved into Capricorn. And that's when the recession happened. Remember, with the housing market, and he's bam, that's very much a Pluto.
Wow. Yeah.
So when he moves into Aquarius, it's very different energy, and it echoes this age of Aquarius that we're going into. And really, Pluto in Aquarius is bringing the power back to the people. Every time Pluto has been in Aquarius in the past, and it's, I think, 200 and I forget how many years, it's many years since the last time he's been here. And that's a whole nother conversation to go back into history.
Which we always love with you.
Yes. I definitely want to do that at some point, but Pluto brings light to the shadow. And so he definitely requires us. He's scorpionic in that way that we were talking about, where it's, you got to go into the caves to bring things to light so that we can actually make the change and die and be reborn. So whenever you have a planet, especially Pluto, shift into a new sign, it's a really big shift, but it's only until June. So from March until June is this new feeling. And then in 2024, he goes full on into Aquarius. I wanted to talk about the shadow versus the invitation of this energy. And usually you see the shadow first because it's new. It's like we got stuff to pull up. So the shadow of Aquarius, it would be detachment and leaning too much on technology or being really hyper intellectual, almost to the point where you detach from feeling and you're just in the information. Aquarius energy does hold what's best for the group, best for humanity, unity consciousness, essentially. But Pluto will show us where people have lost the power, period. So I'm assuming that means more structures crumbling, more corporation stuff and the media and things where we've lost control. And the nodes will still be in Scorpio and Taurus. So we're still going to see those themes that we had from last year or in this year.
With a different flavor, basically.
Much different flavor. Yeah. The higher vibrational energy or the invitation with Pluto in Aquarius is everyone coming together, healing technology, innovation to heal and unify people, equality, taking care of the group, but not losing your individual heart-centered voice. Because that's also the shadows where we lose our individual voice and we just do what's best for the collective, which isn't always the best because we lose our freedoms when that happens. And we saw this in 2020 and 2021. We saw this kind of play out with Saturn and Aquarius. It's really using technology and finding new ways to connect with each other and care about each other, essentially. So this is a 20-year cycle that we're moving into. So that's a really, really big deal. And again, it's until June. So from that period, that March till June will feel very different flavoring. In general. Oh, the other thing too that I wanted to mention at the very beginning of the year, and even right now, Mars is retrograde and he usually spends 6 weeks in a sign, but he spends 7 months in a sign. So our 6-week cycle got really extended from August until I think into March of next year. But we start the year with Mars and Mercury retrograde. So what always feels like we go into Capricorn on the winter solstice on December 21st. And that's why people go to the gym and they get, yes, I'm going to get all the things done. I'm going to climb my mountain. I got new goals. Yes, that's still true, but we're going to be in still that retrograde energy. So it's very introspective, at least until the middle of January. Don't beat yourself up if you're not feeling like you really want to make the changes or it feels like you're in that molasses energy, because that's how we start the year. So let yourself really take the holidays and ease into the year, because that's not always true every year. We don't always go into a new year with 2 personal planets retrograde. So slow it down and spend time going inward and give yourself extra planning time to do the goals and stuff, because they're still going to come up. up. You're still going to be motivated to take action, but it's not going to be as fast as you want it to be. And then we have another shift in March too. Saturn is changing signs from Aquarius to Pisces, and he spends about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years in a sign. So that's a big change. And he stays in Pisces all year. And so this is where we're really going to see, I think, legitimizing and structuring spirituality. And there's always a shadow. Like when he moved into Aquarius in 2020, it was very much, and now you can't see your friends. And now go like, and Aquarius rules groups and friends and community. He was like, this is not going to happen. So he's a compressor when he shows us where we need to take responsibility. So on the shadow side of that, we might see, I don't know, trying to control spirituality or structure it in ways that we're not going to be cool with. I'm not sure. But ultimately, it will over time give more legitimacy and structure to the spiritual, where science and spirituality meet, essentially.
We're all for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I think
technology, I think that's interesting.
Yeah. And even just structuralizing and making foundations for growth for people. Because Pisces really holds that we are all one energy. It's super spiritual. It's very compassionate. And you also might see, I'm just imagining more healing centers and people that have been escaping through unhealthy behaviors, trying to get help more too. Mm-hmm. Overall, with the Pluto in Aquarius and Saturn in Pisces, and I know we're seeing this now, but we're going to be going back to ancient technologies, like how we used to heal and have free energy. We're going to see these things come back, and there will be a taste of that in 2023. So we might have some really innovative things come back to light, but in a new way. We're going to bring that ancient shamanistic back to the earth kind of energy, but then it's going to also have this infusion of new innovative science. Essentially.
Oh, that's exciting. So, I love to put those two ancient technologies together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I'm excited to see where it goes. This could be free energy for all people. Like it could go really big. And with Uranus still in Taurus for the next few years, there's still that call to sustainability and change for the earth, and where all that has become so out of whack too. We're still going to see that continue. And he's been asking for earth healing technologies this entire time since 2018. We're still in that cycle too. Just getting back to the natural rhythm of the earth.
Yeah.
But then using new and innovative ways of doing it, healing our body through sound and vibration. And this stuff is all going to be more normalized. Even astrology is going to become, with Pluto and Aquarius, very much more of the word. It's like really where the quantum physics world and that shamanistic side meet each other, and just understanding energy. We're all energy. So what does that mean? How do we use that?
That's part of our daily conversation. So
yes.
It's exciting.
It is true, though. I think even in 2022, seeing how that sort of blazed the trail for this all come into being, because we are seeing brands starting to lean into wellness and mindfulness for sure. So it's so incredible to see that's where it's all heading. And that, astrologically speaking, it's conducive to making more of that. And I love that you touched on the community aspect too earlier, because I think that's something that the world has really missed and needs more of. And as these new, what do you call them, ancient technologies are coming back into being, and being able to bring people together as opposed to just not alienate them, but just give them that one track individualistic perspective. I think really help.
Absolutely. And I think the light workers are the ones that are really leading the way here. And it's going to become where more and more people are like, oh, they become embodied and they understand it. It's not just like these weird woo-woo words.
Actually, make it legit in a way.
Exactly.
Right? It's not as scary that way.
When you talk about embodying, and for those where that may be even a new concept, and maybe they're not even aware that they're becoming embodied with the energy around them, you become lit up. Right. So if you're lit up inside, then you're attracting that other light that we all have. And so to me, I always picture the bright lights attracting one another.
And this is also going to bring more people together to live in community in a different way. We're seeing that now, but it's just going to become more and more where you don't rely on fossil fuels and old structures to live your life, and growing innovative food, and just not what we've been doing. It's not working. So that stuff has got to go. And we're so smart. We can do this. this, it will help.
It's true.
Yeah. It will make it more mainstream, I think.
That's exciting.
So if people are starting to plot out their New Year's resolutions for the year, it feels like following that light of inspiration is the right way to go, and that they can dream big because the opportunities now versus where they were maybe 2 years ago, but even last year, it's opening all of those up. They can take it slow as they go in and really think about it and not feel like you have to rush through it. But on the other hand, it's just feels like very expansive.
Yeah.
It's where we were last year.
It is. And I think the energy shift will feel good, especially after being in Mars retrograde for 7 months, or a Mars in one sign for 7 months, where we all feel like we're walking through molasses. Like I've heard a lot of people say that. I just can't.
That's how we feel. I have felt stuck. We have definitely felt stuck. And hearing your forecast, even personally for the two of us, I feel from a work perspective, it feels, oh, maybe that's why we've been stuck, because things need to blossom in a year where it's the taste of new. And then you talked about these ancient technologies and this expansiveness and acceptance and normalizing of spirituality and wellness in general and new ways of doing things. It helps to validate the why, at least for this last year. Things have felt like, why aren't things moving faster?
Yes. You got to marinate.
Yeah.
Or spices.
It's so true. But I also think people coming out of COVID had this expectation that everything was automatically going to shift. And I think to your point of the whole Scorpio, and you have to look at all those shadows and really, that's why we're here.
Yes.
And really why we're here is to do that work. And this year was, like it or not, the opportunity to do that. And we always have it. But I mean, really, I think for many of us who are used to being like, well, let's go on to the next thing and everything's going to be great, to not feel that and not really know how to get through that felt really debilitating at times.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? This spiritual revolution or the new earth or whatever you want to call it that we're building, it's like we do it from within, not externally.
Yes.
Even though we've been taught everywhere we look to look outside of ourselves. So this really is that moment to be like, no, you got to go in here.
And to your point of feeling it, I think, how could we not have this type of reaction or feeling after our lives were really uprooted in 2020? It's like when you go through some sort of trauma, and I think in our case, it was a collective trauma, or globally, we all had to really change our everyday lives. It's kind of a metaphor for other things in life. We go through these, even individually, major losses or changes, and that's the transformation is in the work.
Yes.
And it's a flip way of looking at things too. You can actually say, instead of it being really shitty right now, it's like, I'm doing the work.
Love that.
I'm doing the work. And because that's what it's there for. And we can make the choice to lean in or to avoid. It's always your choice.
Yep.
But it's in the leaning in that you actually get the work done.
Yeah. And that's like why we're here as a human.
And Stevie, you helped give us that bird's eye view. Honestly, even though we're in this spiritual work on a daily basis, I actually needed to hear it that way, I think, to help make sense of this past year. So I'm so grateful to have that perspective. And I'm hoping that whomever is listening right now, it's helping you too.
Something came to me. It's like having this astrological perspective is almost like having the weather forecast, right?
Yes.
It's like, it may be that way. It may vary a little bit, but if you know the rain is going to come, you can bring the umbrella. If you know it's going to be a sunny day, you know why, you can feel into it. It's just having that understanding of what's going on around you just so helps you navigate your day to day.
It does. It helps you just let go and just be in it. There's no, when we hold on so tightly, it's like when we really suffer versus just being like, I trust, it's fine, it's all good, even when it's not.
Yes, very much. Then second half of the year, once Mars, let's say, gets out of its retrograde, what will there be a lighter feel in that second half?
It's interesting. So Mars will go direct, I think it's on the 13th of January, the 12th, something like that, but he'll still be in Gemini for a couple months. So we're still walking the path that we walked since August. So from August until March, we're in this, and this is just one planet, right? One piece.
And what is Mars' rule for those listening? What is Mars?
Rules our action, our drive, our passion. He's like our masculine side that like wants to go and move forward. So we've all like literally been like, oh yeah, you can't because you're in molasses and you can't walk very fast. So
oh my God, that honestly,
people need this information.
Yes, especially when you just said starting in August, because that's really where we started to feel ourselves. What the holy hell?
Yeah. And the interesting part is because it's in Gemini, it's all about relearning, taking in information that you did, but differently, and having your clipboard and being the student, essentially. Something else to learn here. And there's more conversations to be had. There's more or not. Maybe you need to go inward. Maybe you need to not have less conversations to just let yourself be. But there's something to relearn. And that can also be a bit frustrating. Anytime a planet is retrograde, we can all get frustrated because it's not going the way we want it. Yeah. The second half of the year, though, is interesting because one more thing about the first half of the year that I wanted to mention is that Jupiter will be in Aries starting in December, actually, of 2022, all the way through May. And we got a taste of that this year, but for the most part, Jupiter was in Pisces. So in Aries, it's all about expansion of the self, healing the self, being brave, being sovereign, really taking your personal power back and healing yourself. But from a place of not tension, not roadblocks, just, oh, this is so expansive for me. And also just the energy around being really excited to start new things and pioneer new things and move forward. So that will be the flavor of the first half of the year too, which is nice.
Yes.
When you said starting December, so that's now.
Yes, it's on the solstice. So that's a very potent day too. Jupiter always brings a lot of expansion and growth. So I always like to call him Santa Claus because he brings gifts. He can sometimes overdo it. It's fine. Sometimes we need to overdo it.
Yes.
And Jupiter and Saturn are very social planets. So they give us a view of what the collective will be going through socially. So in May, he moves into Taurus and spends the rest of the year in Taurus. And that is going to echo a lot of the Taurian things we were talking about, like what do we value, our money systems, our economy, our food structures, and our senses too, like embodiment, being in the body, enjoying nature, enjoying food, enjoying anything that's like sensual pleasure. So those things will feel really good. And this is also really good news for the earth, for healing. And it might bring in some new innovative ideas around our food, our money. Maybe it's cryptocurrency, maybe it's something else we don't even know about. So that's a nice thing too, a nice energy to be in. So really from May until the rest of the year, it's very indulgent. Taurus just wants to eat the piece of chocolate and make the beautiful things and just enjoy the view. And so that will also feel really good in our body, especially after being on this roller coaster of being forced into the body.
Yeah.
And it will help everyone kind of ask yourself those questions. What do I value and how do I want to put my energy into that, into prioritizing what I actually want in my life? And then July, we have a really big shift. That's when the nodes change from Taurus, Scorpio into Aries and Libra. And like I mentioned before, this is collective shadow and then where we're headed. So what we're letting go of and what we're moving into. So this is a complete rebalancing and reharmonizing because the shadow is in Libra. So we're going to see where we've been out of balance in relationship, the earth, anywhere, essentially.
Wow.
And it'll probably bring up things like people pleasing and boundaries and what's good for you. And it will probably bring up relationship endings and beginnings because people will start to realize this mirror that they've been looking at isn't quite the one that makes them feel in harmony. Or also Libra is the sign of justice and seeing two sides of a story. So it will bring justice to light, like where things have been off balance with that too, for the people and just in general, their justice system. So that's a really big shift. Anytime the nodes shift, everyone's like, what's going on?
Wow.
So we have really big shifts next year.
Yeah. And when the node shift, just as you were talking about what we were dealing with in 2022, is it a year-long thing or is it longer?
It's 18 and a half months, I think.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but I think it's around months. So all of 2022 was one set of nodes. And then we get halfway through the year is where the shift happens. So yeah. And that's Libra, Aries are cardinal signs. So they're signs that want to take action and move forward and not just talk about it, not just sit in your trauma, but get some things done, essentially. Because Taurus, Scorpio are fixed signs, and that just means that they stand still. So like in order to do the work, you got to go in and down.
That definitely makes sense with everything else you've said about 2022, being in it and with everything else going on. So it feels like 2023 is is going to feel very different.
It will.
Especially after March, it seems.
Yep. And then things go back, like Pluto goes back into Capricorn. I think that was in June. And so we'll have to sweep up the last signs of Capricorn, which I know lots of people are talking about, like the USA's Pluto return. So I won't even go into that because so many astrologers are talking about it. But it's like a reconciliation of the United States' power and how we built our structures and systems. So we're going to go back into that and sweep it up. That's the ending part. So taste of new beginnings, but all the work isn't quite done yet. So from June until the end of the year, Pluto will be in Capricorn for the last time until 2024.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting because from a planet perspective, it feels like with this coming in of this Aquarius energy and this community energy and the spiritual energy, that it can lead to that. And I love how the second half of the year is all about how to take action on that and how to carry that forward. It just feels like there's such an opportunity in 2023 to really, it just feels lighter. It feels like there'll be more light to share and offer the world. So
it's like a rebirth when the nodes go, because if the North Node will be in Aries, and that's the sign of the new. It's like their fresh start, the first sign of the zodiac. It's a sign of spring. And now we're rebirthed. But in order to do that, there's still that Libra shadow work, which is what relationships are you choosing? So where are you out of balance? So I think a lot of people are going to change a lot still in 2023, especially the people that they're choosing in the second half of the year to have as their mirrors. Wow. And that also includes like relationship work from your ancestry, and it's endless.
But what's so great about this vision that you're giving us for 2023 is that it's sharing a common thread among all of us. Even though we have our own individual astrological signs and profiles, this reminds us how we're all going through the same thing as a collective, which I love.
Yeah, it's so true. And also it's up to us, right? Whatever we give energy to is what creates our reality. So whatever we pay attention to in our own lives and wherever is like what actually will manifest collectively as that collective energy. So I always like to remind myself, wait a minute, we came here to be the creators. We can do whatever we want. We could make this whole like structure crumbling and new earth as fast or as slow as we want, right? It's totally up to us. It depends on where we're giving our energy. It's like a hard thing to remember because
no one talks about that enough. And so it's important for people to keep it in mind. They are choices, right? Where are you putting that energy? And then where are we putting it collectively?
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you're always looking at the bad stuff and what do you think is going to happen? It's just like you're a magnet to whatever you're putting your energy in. And also deeper than that, like what you believe about yourself. Do you believe that humanity can come together and be united and take care of each other and have free energy? And like, yeah, that's completely a possibility. Or do you believe that AI is going to take over the world and the corporations are going to eat us alive? Sure.
So true.
Both could be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's where you're going to choose to put your energy in terms of your own thoughts.
Yeah. And we're so powerful.
We are. And I think on that individual level, are you going to get up every day and choose to be happy or choose joy, choose kindness? That's your choice. Right. I think of that every day. And yes, we can choose fear very easily. A lot of things to be fearful of, but it's a choice to not. It's actually, so I sometimes think it is harder to choose the joy and choose gratitude.
Oh, for sure.
I do. However, I know for myself, I make that choice every single day. Every single day I wake up and make that choice. Even though sometimes who knows what our dreams have brought us, but you wake up and you're a little groggy or you're freaked out by a dream, you can still make the choice to say, okay, that was a dream. And now I'm going to choose to be grateful for today and a new opportunity to make new friends, to learn something new, whatever it is.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think fear can be a really good teacher in the moment. Oh, hi.
Yes.
I'm going to give you a seat at the table and I'm going to honor that this is scary, but it's also, you're not going to drive the bus. So sit there, stay there. And I'm going to choose this instead and honor myself in this process. And we get to really pick that. We've just never really been taught how powerful we are. In fact, we've been told that we are supposed to give our power to everything else. So hopefully that also will come to with this energy of 2023. We'll start to, hey, power to the people. Remember, like you guys can take it back and make whatever you want a reality, essentially. Because this is just the riverbank. The energy is just that part. So whatever happens in between is completely up to us. And I have to remind myself of that all the time. Yeah. Even astrology, you can give your power away.
I think that's a really good point, Stevie.
Yeah.
Yeah, because your astrological chart is not a crystal ball. It's just a potentiality of what can happen. And you are always in the driver's seat of making the choice.
Absolutely.
So even though all of these these things are potentialities in the world. It's really on you to decide.
Totally.
But I can see how a lot of people, and people have actually said to us even before, it's like, oh, once you know that you're a Leo and this, it almost brands you in a certain way and it makes you make choices in a certain way based on that. And talk to that. What do you say to people when they say that to you?
I think that like you have certain things in your chart, right? Like your sun sign, for example, so much more than that. We are like, oh my word, is that just one piece of the puzzle? In fact, I like to argue like that isn't even the most potent piece at all. It's just where you get life force energy and how you present yourself in the world externally. But you have so many other pieces and parts and so many, at least through my belief, a lifetime's worth of things you brought in and gifts and challenges. And it's just, I think, and within that, a Leo can be very, just for example, really aggressive and the life of the party in a really bad way where they're trying to seek attention because they're insecure, or they can be the most alive, invigorating, inspiring human that ever walked into the room and just give life force energy to people. So it's just like they're little personality pieces inside of you. You can, again, it comes back to that choice of how you want to use them. And some people have certain things that are a little easier than others. Some people have more challenge, but I always like to think of that too as I chose these challenges. We don't want to give our power away forever.
Exactly. To that point of choice, which again, I don't think some people may have never heard this. I know we've talked about it amongst ourselves on other episodes with you, Stevie, and other episodes in general. We signed up to be in this lifetime and we made certain choices, even we believe, before we came in here so that we could learn certain lessons, as hard as they may seem in the moment. When you look back, as we talked about in this episode, you look back with gratitude because you see how far you've evolved or changed or what you've learned from that, right, into this lifetime.
And that right there for me has been one of the most game-changing beliefs I've ever embodied, is because then I don't give my power away and I'm not a victim of anything.
Yes.
And you can, that's so important, right?
Oh my goodness.
Responsibility.
Huge. I think that's huge. I love that you said the victim, right? We can choose to not be a victim.
And even ask the question differently. So many people, myself included, like, why does this have to happen to me? Or why did this happen to me? And instead of looking at it from a place of being powerless, think about it from a place of being powerful. Like, why? There is a reason. There absolutely is. And it just totally changes the dynamic of the emotion in that moment.
It really does.
To your point earlier, what will come afterwards. And so if you can, in that moment, as hard as it can be, just use for just a second to try to look at it from that perspective, everything can shift.
Yeah, exactly.
You may learn so much that you never would have thought of.
Yeah. And then even maybe if you don't in that moment, maybe went down the road, you're like, oh,
yes,
like
exactly.
Saying about your aunt. Like, I get it. This is why I can trust my higher self. I can trust that this path is here to teach me. And I signed up for these certain blocks or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. And those are the most inspiring stories always, when somebody has been through the most horrific thing, seemingly nonsensical thing, and yet they find a way to triumph over it, to learn from it, and then ideally even teach other people. Oh, I get so inspired by these conversations.
But I feel one of the questions we wanted to ask you was, what is something that someone in the new year can do to really incorporate astrology into their everyday? And I actually think we've given people several different ways, but is there anything else that comes to mind for you that is a simple practice?
Oh, there's a lot. Let me just say two, because I can't just say one.
Great. We'll take that.
I think you don't have to know very much about astrology to watch the pattern, but there's a reason why Thanksgiving is Sagittarius season. It's because let's be grateful and let's have fun and tell stories. Or there's a reason why the new year starts and it's Capricorn season and it feels that way. It's not just the season itself, it's the energy of the season. So I think following the sun is something that's really helpful. And it's 30 days and 12 signs. So you could even just, okay, it's Sagittarius season. What is Sagittarius? And then you look up what that energy holds, and then you can flow with the season. If it's a fire season, you can get lit up. If it's a water season, it's time to feel your feelings. If it's an earth season, you can get things done. There's a reason why go season feels everyone's getting into their routines and back to school, and it just flows. So I think astrology is really here to help us use the cycles, use the seasons for the times, and stop trying to push yourself when the flow isn't there. And that's really one of my biggest passions ever.
You actually do such a good job on your social channels where you cover that, or even in your newsletters. So people should follow you for that. You always do that at the beginning of each cycle.
Yeah. I really like to understand the pull down of energy and then what do you do with it? What is the practical, earthy, human thing to do with this? So yeah, following the sun and the equinoxes and the solstices, those are very sacred days, the wheel of the year, honoring them. I'm definitely teaching my daughter how important the winter solstice is and what it signifies. And just those days are very sacred because the sun's movement, the sun is our life force. It's literally divine God. That's what it is, right? Without it, nothing. And so honoring the sun cycle, I think, is really important, and just getting into the sun.
Yes.
It is life force. It heals us. I have so much to say about that, but just in general, following the sun cycle and what every season holds for you. And it's different for everybody because your chart is lit up by the sun in different places throughout the whole wheel, but you can watch your own pattern. Like, why do you feel really tired during a certain season? And if that's true, maybe you give yourself more cushion to rest during that season because you will notice. And you could even journal it if you want. Okay, for this 30 days, this is how I felt, and watch the patterning, because you don't need to be an astrologer to watch your pattern. And the other thing is the moon. Those are our two luminaries. So the sun is like life force and the moon is our feeling body and really affects us. So watching the patterns of the moon, you can download, I think it's called the Full Moon app, where you can even go to astro.com and just look at the little icons and see what sign the moon is in. Again, you don't have to know anything about astrology. You could even make a little journal and be like, okay, the moon's in Cancer and I feel this. And again, with the moon, if it's in a water sign, it's feeling, earth sign, it's doing, but you'll notice your own pattern. Is the moon full? Is it new? Is it crescent? Just watch it because everyone's very different.
Yeah.
Some people feel really good under a full moon. Some people hate it. And it depends on what phase you were born under. So yeah, those are just some. Following the moon and the sun is something to really always, I think that's very helpful in watching your own patterns. And even just setting intentions with the new moon. And when the full moon comes, something's illuminated about that intention. And we can really create with the planets if we do this. We can find our flow.
Oh, love that.
That's so beautiful. I love that practice. And it's interesting. I think a lot of people may have heard of following the sun and what sign it's in, but not necessarily the moon and what sign it's in. For whatever reason, I just feel like that's not as common in terms of how people speak about.
Yeah. And the moon changes signs every 2.5 days. So we are.
Yes.
And then it changes phases every 3.5 days. So we're constantly ebbing and flowing with her. So there's reasons why on a Capricorn moon, for me, they feel amazing. But for my sister, it's terrible. It's just like,
I'm now going to really pay attention to that because I was aware of it, but I didn't really pay attention to the patterns in terms of my feeling. And so your point of how that makes you feel is important.
And definitely notice. I notice it in my family. I notice when things are I'm like, oh, today's going to be this or a flavor of this. And yep.
Because the moon, we're not always conscious of the moon because it's the end of our day. We're sleeping. We don't often pay attention to it like we do the sun.
Yeah. And she really will pull and push us emotionally. Where the sun is just, oh, here's life force. And it's different. It's very different.
Oh, those were good. We're excited to hear about what your new offering. It's not really new anymore. You've been doing it this past year. Can you tell everybody what you've been working on and how you've been working with people, and what is your Soul Blueprint Alchemy program?
Yeah, I'd love to. I was doing readings for a long time and I love my readings. And sometimes I get to talk to people multiple times in the year, but I just don't know what happens to them after it's over. And I wanted to go way deeper with people. And I had clients being like, when do we get to talk again? I was like, I don't know, whenever you want. So I started working with a mentor actually, and I created a program called the Soul Blueprint Alchemy program. And it's a 4-month-long program where we get to talk almost once a week for 4 months. So we get to do like quantum leaping together. We get to change your reality. And we really go into what your beliefs are in yourself, like your identity. So a soul blueprint is essentially your birth chart. And it, like we were talking about earlier, it holds all those different personalities inside of you. So how does your mind work? Where does your drive at? How does your emotional body function? Where do you get roadblocked? Where do you want to feel free? The blueprint really shows us all of these things. And then within that, they're activated differently throughout years, days, whatever, weeks. So the program itself, we get to talk about where are the retrogrades in your chart? Where in your life are you going backwards? What does an eclipse mean for you? And then within that, there's also a big part of my program where you get to learn about every single part of you. So in a reading, you get to know a little bit about your moon, a little bit about your rising, but we get to talk for a whole hour about them. And you could talk for hours and hours about one placement in a chart. There's so much depth to it. So it's really a program where you get to know yourself on a very deep level, probably more than you ever will. It's like a magnifying glass to every passenger on your bus. And then also every week we talk about what's going on this week astrologically for you. If there's a certain day that they're doing something hard, what does that mean? Where's the moon? Where's the flow? So it's been the most beautiful, rewarding work I've ever done because people literally walk away very different people. It's true alchemy. And that's what I really was trying to, I want the drama. I want to really help transform because I really care.
Yeah.
And there's a level of not only the depth of understanding, but accountability for it, right?
Yeah.
Because it puts you on a journey for that period of time to really learn about yourself. Imagine that. And to have this sort of hidden treasure map, which you have to our souls and why we are the way we are and why things in the world impact us that way. Are there certain types of people that should really consider doing this at certain points in their lives? Or is it just generally for everybody who's looking to know more?
I would say that most of my clients are women, often business owners, I think just because I am. And so that's just usually teach you what you've been through. But I think it's mostly for people that really want to live a life without judgment of self, without in the confines of our social structures. They want to go their own way and live more authentically and more in flow. And so often people will come to me and they're just like, I'm at the edge of the cliff and I really just want to jump, but I need some help. Need a parachute and some information. And so then we jump. And then, it can be as dramatic as leaving a very abusive relationship for years, or it could just be you want to change careers, or literally you just want to feel better when you wake up, know yourself enough to have compassion. And my favorite thing is to get to the, like I was saying earlier, get to the belief of whatever your beliefs are that are ingrained in you, because those are really what create the thoughts, which create the emotions, which then creates your reality. It's how it works. So how do we get to the root of why you feel that way? And then really understand it and give it a voice so that we can flip it on its head. It's been amazing, like truly.
I love the way you put that because our beliefs create this false self.
Yes, exactly.
That we think is ourself.
Right.
And this ability to go back to this blueprint and see at our root who we are and what we want for ourselves. That does let you see yourself in a completely different way.
And it's been so cool because my intuitive gifts have really turned way up. And so I've been seeing people's past lives. I've been seeing images. It's very random. And I've just opened myself up to the intuitive side of it, which you won't be able to necessarily describe intellectually in a soul blueprint or in a birth chart. So that's been amazing because I get to build trust with people and security. And so it's just been so rewarding.
And you've always had that intuitive side of you, which I know I can speak for Karen. I think when we have our own readings with you, that comes out and you're so gifted at your knowledge of astrology and the way that you interpret it. But then you are also able to use those intuitive gifts. And so when you are actually giving the reading, because you're using those intuitive gifts, you know exactly which things to highlight and how to articulate them, which is a gift. You can know astrology, but without that intuitive part, it may not feel as personal. And I think
I was just going to say the exact same thing. Like every single reading that you do for people who've had readings with there are amazing astrologers out there, but there are who know the science and who know how to interpret very well. And that's always helpful. But I think what I've always seen with you, Stevie, is you have this softness when you do your reading, and it doesn't assume or imply or state a fact as a fact. You always are feeling your way through the reading. You always stop and ask, does that make sense to you? Does that feel right to you? It's a two-way conversation. It's not like you're just reading it and handing the information over to someone, which I feel is so important because then you react even more to that person's feeling about what they're going through, not just the situation from an astrological perspective. It makes sense. There's always
that.
It's really true. It just feels like such a loving kind of experience, if I can put it that way. It really does feel that way.
Thank you. I think it's really important as astrologers to be really mindful of the language that we use because we were talking about earlier, you could say something and then someone takes it as, oh, this is a bad thing. And it's so important to have integrity with knowing how, with any spiritual worker, right? What you say has such potency and honoring because we have no idea. I can see things, even psychics, right? You can see things, you can see energies, you have no idea what their experience, how they experience that thing and what is the actual medicine that they need to see it from a higher perspective or whatever, just feel it. Or so really honoring people's experiences, I think is really important and taking your word with, I don't even know how to describe it, but you know what I'm saying? It's important.
But it's being responsible.
Honestly. It is.
Being responsible. And I think just talking about your program, I feel like what a gift for somebody, because I know what your readings can do for, I know, my own life, to others that I love who've had readings with you, and to then have that and be able to dig into it on a weekly basis, you would really learn so much more about yourself and where you're going. I just think for anybody who is looking to dive deeper and or they're on that edge or feel stuck, honestly, I feel like that's another way to utilize that type of program.
Most definitely. Because often people will come in and be like, I hate my job, don't like my business anymore. And I know it's not actually really about that. That's the external thing that's playing out, but it's not really about that. And then by the end, maybe they didn't completely change jobs or get a whole new business, but the way that they see it is completely different. And then that's what creates your reality. And that's how you find your joy. And what we were talking about earlier, like how you can wake up feeling different than you did before.
It's all new perspective.
Exactly.
And I think the other thing too, if people are just starting to dabble more into these spiritual modalities, astrology is such a comfortable place to begin because there is so much science to it. There is so much validity to it, tangibility, things that they can actually really do. And I think it's just a great place for people to start if they're looking to explore and go deeper.
And it like comes back to how ancient it is. It's like one of the most ancient.
Yes.
And we're still learning. We're still finding asteroids and planets and dwarf planets and like even modern astrology in that way. It's never ending. Like as our consciousness expands, we're finding new energetic bodies.
Yeah, you're right. Which is
crazy.
Really so exciting. Yeah, that's so true. And to your point of it being, I'm always so fascinated at the different sites that are continually found that show how people thousands of years ago were utilizing astrology. They were maybe on the winter solstice, something would hit a specific rock formation. Yeah. And it's so clear now because we have the proof, because it's happened now for as long as we've been alive.
Yeah.
And as human beings, I feel it makes us feel special to know that we came in with this soul plan, this blueprint that we've created for ourselves. It doesn't make us feel as random and the events that happen to us as random. It just really gives a totally different meaning. And I also love that this is so ancient, and yet it brings in that one of my favorite words is wonder, this wonder of how did they know? How did they understand and use this science to help them in their lives? And yet still use it with such trust and faith to plant garden or fields, right? Or create whole cities around where the stars told them. It's just the whole thing to me is just so fascinating.
And they were like so much more in flow, right?
Yes,
like so much
that's
more
right.
Natural cycles and how far we've swung.
So true.
And even astrology explains that, right? Our actual solar system is traveling through certain parts of the universe, and some of them are darker and some of them are lighter, and we're heading into a lighter portion. So it means things are going to become illuminated. And it's just even that, right? It's not wrong or bad. It just was part of the cycle of the swing. Yeah, it's helpful.
Yeah. And to your point, when we look where we are right now and entering 2023, there's so much distraction to take us out of that flow. It's actually in many ways, and I think which is why we're seeing so much change to get us back into flow. But it's actually harder because we become so reliant on so much to help us on a day-to-day basis rather than just being with Earth and with the energy aware.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? All the answers are in the natural cycle. Like when the leaves fall, we should be shedding. And when the
my goodness,
like all of it's just like, hello, it's right there out your window. But you're right, it is harder. It is because we're faster and we're busier and we're
exactly like there's so much more. Even when I think about how I grew up versus how my daughter's growing up and what I was doing at her age or what we did and didn't have, right? We didn't have the internet. I didn't grow up with the internet until I was in college. So it was literally you could watch TV or read a book or go outside and play with your friends, maybe talk on the phone. So it was just so different. When you look at that, you look at our different generations and how they grow up. Of course, it's going to be different. Our children are growing up with so much more around, which has taken them, I think, out of flow.
Yeah. And also like to the point about the different generations, they're coded differently because they're Pluto.
That is so true.
And so they're like
chose to come
have this kind of certain experience, but that's where like those things merge, like getting back into the flow, but then still having technology.
Yes, that's right. Like how do you integrate it?
Yeah, because it's here and no matter what,
correct,
that's the trajectory we're going on. And these kids are, I think they're not, I don't want to use the word programmed, but their blueprint, their activations or whatever you want to call it are meant for that.
I agree. I actually use that word. I know it's weird, but I use that word programmed too.
Yeah, this is
VR
true.
program.
Yeah.
Now with this year ahead, how it's giving us this opportunity to like swing back in the other direction, back to that ancient technology again. And I think there's no coincidence that there is now such a fascination and wanting to go back in that direction, because people know that it's just, we've just gotten too far out of that flow. And that's why we're feeling disconnected and lost and all this things. We're so far away from the earth and the stars and the basics of the earth that are part of us. We're part of it and it's part of us.
And I think understanding how we're all made of energy and how we work with that will like change.
Exactly. Yes.
Because then it will explain spirituality, right? We can't not.
Yes. And we always talk about energy and vibration. We know that everything has vibration. Everything has energy, literally everything. And if we can, from a technological perspective, if we can start to literally show it, if you could show somebody, look at this, look at the energy vibration of this, and then it will give more validity to everything.
So true. It's just interesting. Infrared lighting, I've been playing with that. And okay, so we don't have very much sun, or you need this, or we have a lot of electronic stuff coming at us all the time. So I've been wearing these glasses that when the sun goes down to mimic the sun's circadian rhythm so that my circadian rhythm is in flow with hers. So like I'm still on my screen, but now my eyes aren't taking in the light in the same way. And so that's what I mean. Like we can still have all of these things, but we're going to get smarter about how to work with them and not make our bodies be like, because we can't handle the influx all the time. So that I'm super excited about how those things mesh together, because technology is not going away. We're so connected. That's part of the age of Aquarius, is to be fully connected with someone anywhere across the world. So that information highway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which has sped up clearly for most people in the last few years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Oh my God. We could talk to you all day.
I know.
Me too.
So
Well, we're just going to make this pact that every year at this time, we're going to get back together and see how the year went, what we thought, and the lessons we learned, because that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
We need to do that. But I love what you've shared with us. It feels hopeful and light and expansive, and the opportunity to get back to that ancient technology. I love that. It just is bringing everything together that we love and love talking about. So
Thank you so much. It was a joy.
thank you. And really looking forward to 2023 and seeing what it brings for all of us, and hopefully more working together. Thank you, Stevie.
Yeah. Thank you.
If you want to find out more about the Soul Blueprint Alchemy program and working with Stevie, visit farmhousemoon.com. That's FARMHOUSEMOON.com. You can also follow Stevie at Farmhouse Moon on Instagram. Thank you.